almost no one raises the real issue of tax avoidance, right? And of the rich just not paying their fair share. I mean, it feels like I'm at a firefighters conference and no one's allowed to speak about water.
Today we walk into this house with an iconic South African plant, the Alu Ferox. We must take the bitter with the sweet.
It is a matter that is under consideration. And all I would say is that watch this space.
Welcome to this week's episode of the SA Money Report. This financial podcast is brought to you by Fin24 and hosted by Deputy Editor Ahmed Arif.
South Africans have a complicated relationship with our airlines. SA Airways, who knows what's happening there? Treasury and the Department of Public Enterprises don't appear to be on the same page with regards to the sale to the Takatso Consortium, and there's still no money on the table for everyone to see, and it looks like it needs even more money, and all of that's up in the air, so to speak. Then down on the ground, quite literally, we have Comair, the local British Airways operator and operator of low-cost airline Kulula.com, which also hasn't had a good run of things over the last couple of years. This week, things got worse for them. Helping us to understand what happened is Fin24's aviation guru, Carin Smith. Hi there, Carin. So tell us what happened to Comair on Tuesday evening and why did it happen?
So I just want to firstly apologize if I sound a bit weird, but I'm battling a cold and I sound a bit like I'm under the ocean, but I'm not. Last night I was lying in bed, ready to go to sleep or watch more Netflix. And then suddenly I saw the announcement that Comair is suspending all their flights. They operate low-cost airline Kulula.com. They also operate British Airways. And just to get rid of any confusion, it's not your British Airways flying in from London. It's a local license agreement that Comair has with British Airways to fly domestically. So they suddenly said they're suspending this because they need more funding. And they even suspended ticket sales. And they said once they've secured more funding or additional funding that they need, then they can start operations again. But it's not sure when that will be. According to industry insiders I spoke to, they think it was mainly the big impact of the fuel price increase that's been this last straw for Comair not being able to continue at the moment without even more funding. Also, somebody I spoke to this morning said they saw some stranded international passengers who most likely had booked, they'd flown in, they were on the plane, obviously, flying here when the suspension notice went out, and they obviously had connecting flights on British Airways domestically, probably on the way. But what baffles me a lot, Ahmed, is how come Comair still ran a sale promotion on Tuesday morning? That's what a lot of people I've spoken to are questioning.
So, Carin, Comair, obviously, there's been a lot going on with Comair recently, right? It was undergoing or is undergoing a business rescue process. How did all of this business rescue thing start, and why did it happen?
So, Comair, actually, they've always done well. They've really had a good track record, and then came obviously the pandemic. And all the airlines were grounded, and it had a big impact on them. But in early May 2020, they went into business rescue, and they only started flying again in December 2020. So according to its business rescue plan, they said that it was their sharply rising debt because of their fleet renewal program they'd started, obviously not knowing that the pandemic was on its way. And I think, if I remember correctly, Comair was the only airline in South Africa that actually had ordered, and I think one or two were already delivered, of the Boeing 737 MAX planes. Those planes that were grounded after two fatal accidents, one of which was an Ethiopian airline accident. And Comair is actually still in a legal battle in the USA trying to get out of that contract. They ordered a number of those Boeing Maxes, but I think, like I said, only about two were delivered in the end. And they want to get out of that contract. And then of the pandemic, so it's like all these different punches coming from all over to that they're still in business rescue because of that.
Carin, business rescue practitioners say that there's a need for additional working capital. And obviously, this is largely what all of this is about. And they might have gotten it by the time this airs, or they probably might not. And their planes might be back in the air. But how much do they actually need? And how and where are they looking to get that money? I mean, haven't they basically sold off parts of the business already for more money?
Yes, but it's unclear how much more they need. I don't think they've made that known. But in December last year, December 2021, they sold off, they got permission to sell off their slow lounges at some of the local airports. I think they got about 250 million for that. But that was obviously not enough. One industry insider I spoke to this morning, he claims that Comair has been running under budget every month for a while, up to about 100 million under budget. Now, that's a claim. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's a large amount of money. And the business rescue plan that was from September 2020 actually promised that they would pump in that the consortium that was appointed as the preferred bidder for Comair, that they would pump in about 400 million and raise another 100 million. But I don't know. Obviously, that was not enough. All the cost of running the airline is just ate into it. And past rescue reports, I mean, by law, every month the rescue practitioners have to bring out a report. And in their latest report, they also, it came out at the end of April, so fairly recently. They said that more capital has to be raised. And they, according to business rescue practitioners, they said it was mainly due to the impact of the higher oil prices, international travel restrictions during the December holiday period, and the severe impact of their temporary suspension of their flights in March by the South African Civil Aviation Authority. And they need this money, the business rescue practitioners said, in the short term and in the medium term. But they sounded pretty positive in their rescue report that the consortium would be able to raise this working capital.
So you mentioned the Comair Rescue Consortium, and they've obviously been selected as the preferred bidder of Comair, and you got its CEO who took over as Comair CEO, while the company still remains in business rescue. So who is the Comair Rescue Consortium, and when will that whole process be concluded around that?
Yes. So by law, the business rescue practitioners, they cannot just exit business rescue if they're not sure that they now have a viable company going. If they can't get to that, then of course they would have to wind down the company or liquidate it. So it's unsure. There are lots of question marks. We don't know when that will happen. As far as the consortium, the Comair Rescue Consortium, it's my understanding that it comprises some former board members and executives of Comair, and it also involves US-based founders of the Monster energy drink company, Rodney Sachs and Hilton Schlossberg. Industry insiders I've spoken to, once again, they say that the management of Comair, they have good and sound aviation experience. So it's not because of that, in their view, that Comair has hit these challenges.
I hope it means that Monster energy drink would be sold for cheap on the plane. But Carin, what's Comair's share of the local aviation market? Basically, how big of a player is it locally?
Well, last week, the Comair CEO told me that they have about 40% of the South African market. I think we also saw that when their planes were grounded in March, that there was suddenly a scramble in the local aviation industry to satisfy the demand. So they have two really good brands. So Kulula.com is one of the leading low-cost carriers, and then British Airways brand is also a solid brand. It's I think, I speak under correction, but it's almost like the only full service. In other words, it offers a loyalty program, it offers business class options, etc. In South Africa at the moment, the British Airways brand, because I don't think any of the other airlines offer that full service at the moment, but I speak under correction.
And lastly, Carin, we've hinted at this throughout the conversation. This obviously isn't the first time that Comair's planes were grounded. Talk us through what happened earlier this year and why their planes had to be grounded and how that got sorted out.
It was I think about mid-March. Then the Civil Aviation Authority they imposed a precautionary suspension on of Comair's aircraft operating certificate, or AOC. It was a 5-day period that they were grounded while the Civil Aviation Authority did like they say, an unscheduled audit of Comair. It was after what the Civil Aviation Authority called a series of incidents during Comair flights. It included, like, I think, landing gear indicator on one of the flights, issues like that. But also last week, the Comair CEO pointed out to me that the inspection of the Civil Aviation Authority found no safety issues regarding the aircraft, maintenance, or pilots. Those are 3 very important components. He said they did have some findings around administrative issues relating to the safety process and therefore imposed this precautionary suspension. And once all the paperwork was supplied, then the suspension was lifted. But it was unfortunate. It was a very unfortunate occurrence for Comair. And yes, I really do wish them well and hope they can sort out their problems.
Thanks for your time, Carin.
Thank you, Ahmed.
This brings our show to an end. The music in this episode is courtesy of Getty Images and Epidemic Sound. The installment was produced with the help of News 24's genius multimedia whiz, Kayleen Morgan. Thank you for listening.